this is exactly a step in the right direction. So what we had was a public high school in West Virginia decided that they were going to do something that a lot of high schools do normally, where they have an event for the kids of a certain class or the kids of a certain focus or whatever it is. It's just that this how do we say this? Well, this had a bit of a different flavor. So it it, it just so happened that, like, right in the middle of these kids all congregating in the auditorium, this fella gets up there and well, he has a religious revival. I mean, he just flat out starts preaching to these kids and attempting to convert them. And I think they had a baptism. I think they had some baptisms at the end of it, y'all. Um, you know, the problem on top of that, though, is that apparently some of the kids couldn't leave. Some of the kids were forced to stay there. Now, the church that was a part of it says, "Hey, we didn't do this." The organization at the school reached out to us, and the school says, "Well, it was voluntary. You weren't supposed to be there if you didn't want to be." But that's not what happened. What happened is they told a bunch of students, "You have to be here and you have to listen to this guy preach to you." And I think a lot of us are familiar with what that preaching can be, and it wasn't great. I definitely didn't enjoy a lot of the things that he was saying. And truly, this is why, once again, and I'm so happy to be able to highlight this organization, but FFRF, y'all, it's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful organization. And they definitely are here and stepping up. And I'm really glad that people were paying attention. And I'm glad that our students are knowledgeable enough on our Constitution and how our government is supposed to be run. So, what do y'all think?
Excellent intro. Thank you very much, Secular Rarity, for bringing us into that. I'm going to football this over to Kelly because Kelly had some really good feedback concerning this whole thing. So, Kelly, could you please go ahead and waylay on
W-
this topic?
when I first read this article, I was literally appalled. I could not believe that something like this could happen in a public school. I was really really let down that the school administration would let this happen, and that the teachers would have let this happen. I would have thought that they had them be able to opt out as supposedly they're supposed to do. I would have thought that the teacher would have asked people if if they had belonged to another religion, which they didn't do. And I kind of have to get the feeling this was done purposefully, that they brought these kids in here on purpose. I think the whole article was about a one Jewish kid in particular that had to sit through this Christian baptism, and I just can't believe that they would force this kid to do this. And it seems to me it was kind of prepared for that. Hey, maybe we can get this kid out of his religion and into ours. And I just couldn't see how that could be allowed in a public school at all.
Gross oversight for
I,
the adults that were in the
yeah,
room, and it's horrible. But Jason has something to say about the Zoomers.
Well, and so I kind of bring this back to when I was going through high school, and a lot of my generation, we would talk about things that we didn't like about our school, dress codes changing, and I was going through high school during Columbine.
Mm.
Thankfully, I was nowhere near that school when that happened, but so we had a lot of fear and this, that, and going on, and just a lot of, but what these kids were going through, it's just like it's even worse. School shootings are up, which really doesn't have anything to do with this particular article. But it got me kind of like, oh, uh, these kids are being more active, than my generation could ever be, because we were just like, oh, I want to be active, but I've got band practice, or I've got football practice, or I've got this, that, and the other thing, and life got in the way. And then I start reading further and further into this article, and I started getting more and more upset because as great as those kids were who walked out of their class, and again, this was after the revival. This wasn't even during the revival, because they were literally locked in a room. It's amazing that they're still saying, no, we're going to get out. But then you get even further into just the massive dishonesty, and this pastor going, oh, we don't go to the kids, they come to us. And I'm thinking, no. You have kids in your congregation, and they're trying to play the whole big commission game that is so important to theists. Get them young, get them into those pews. And so the only way that they come to you is that they went there, came back, hit my mic, like I'm sure Greg is going to yell at me for later, and then it's so frustrating, and I'm like, are you absolutely kidding me on this? That you are going to go ahead and just make this whole situation completely uncomfortable with people of different faiths, and I'm sure that this is not an isolated incident, but once again, we're seeing West Virginia. And we just recently had a friend of the show in Telltale practically run out on a rail because he was showcasing some of the things that his daughter found in a health class. So, West Virginia, you need to wake the fuck up.
As with the entire nation that allows anything like this to happen, when I first read the article, I thought if this could be a private school. And then as I read further, found out this was a public school. And I am baffled that a public school would allow a Christian revival to happen on property that is paid by taxpayers, where the law of the land is supposed to be separation of church and state, separation of religion and government, one of our founding principles here at the Atheist Community of Austin, and other organizations like Freedom from Religion. Shout out to Freedom from Religion, by the way. They do absolute great work. And they even wrote a letter concerning this whole matter. And part of it says that it is inappropriate and unconstitutional for the district to offer religious leaders unique access to preach and proselytize to students during school hours on school property. The district cannot allow its schools to be used as recruiting grounds for churches. And I'm really glad that they got together along with the American Civil Liberties Union of West Virginia and other organizations in order for them to protest this mishap, this overstepping of their of what the leadership has completely and obviously misused. Now, there's some people who would make argument that says that separation of church and state per se is not in the Constitution. But in 1833, there was a certain thing called this judiciary branch. I think you guys heard of maybe the Supreme Court. I don't know if anybody heard of it,
It rings a bell.
Yeah.
Is that related to SCOTUS?
Something like that.
Yeah, or scrotum. Sorry, not Thursday. Anywho,
Thursday somewhere.
it's It's Thursday somewhere.
Thursday somewhere.
But by 1833, all states had disestablished religion from government, providing protections for religious liberty in the state constitutions. And in the 20th century, the U.S. Supreme Court applied the Establishment Clause to the states through the 14th Amendment. And today, the Establishment Clause prohibits all levels of government from either advancing or inhibiting religion. And if it is a public school that is being funded by taxpayers' dollars, guess what, West Virginia? That's a government institution. Yes, it is.
Mhm.
Yes, it totally is. But I'm going to go ahead and stop talking right now and go back to Sec Rare, it of the tea, to offer more tea to this body of content E.
Well, I won't have as much alliteration, I don't think, but that's not for a lack of trying on my part. Well, you know what? We'll do a whole episode just like spoken word poetry. Anyway,
Johnny, get on that, please.
Yes, please.
one of the really upsetting parts is, so when we put students in a school and we tell them that you have to be here from this time to this time, and these are the people that are in charge of you, that's really a powerful message when during those hours of the day we are advocating for a religious organization like this, and we are doing that by having this type of event. And I said in my notes, I would be uncomfortable with the Satanic Temple doing an event like this during school hours. It after school or before school, it is a public building, and as long as you go through the processes to follow the law to rent out the space, do your thing. But while students are supposed to be in class, this shouldn't be a religious, it shouldn't be a my side, your side. Like, look, we're all going to one of these days, most likely, be so old and confused about whatever the newest social media is, right? Or uncontrollably pooping our pants. And we're going to need the younger folk to be both studied in compassion and medicine. And how the hell do we do that if we're constantly having these religious events at school during their hours of learning? So I wouldn't be comfortable with any religious institution doing it. Let's take the opportunity to just talk more about, I don't know, math or reading. I mean, we could
Or science.
Yeah, we
Or
could,
science.
I could use
Science
that.
is good. Yeah,
Science would be great.
yeah.
You know?
I dig the science.
Yeah.
But even check this out, guys. Now you all know this is West Virginia, and if the religious
Almost
event,
heaven.
almost heaven, almost
West Virginia. Yeah.
it's almost
Blue Ridge
heaven.
Mountains you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh,
Shenandoah Valley.
okay. It's okay. Can you get coffee
river.
from there? Can you
No.
get coffee? No. Okay, then it's not heaven. So dig this. If it were another religious event, like say for instance, if it was an imam that wanted to do let's say prayer, one of the times for prayer for
Oh, the state would explode.
the teachers,
Just
the
if it-
states, the parent, everybody would have a freaking cow if that was the case.
If it had just been a rabbi for the one kid, for the one Jewish kid, they would have been having a
Yes.
cow.
They would have had a cow. All these things, like if we know it's, don't let the Satanic Temple come up in there and try to do, oh my gosh, that would have been fucking get it, and you know it. So I don't understand. This is another portion that I don't understand. If this is also a public school, I know that part of their social studies is civics and constitution, because all children in the United States have to take this in order for them to be able to graduate 8th grade and go to high school. where were the teachers that are supposed to be teaching Constitution and civics that were to say, hey guys, guess what? We can't do this. It's kind of against the law. We could get in trouble. Did no one thought about this? You got guys, what you got to say about that?
I think
That's
they are willing to, forego a missed answer or two. But here's now, I'm not going to talk for this panel. I'm not going to talk for all atheists. But I would say that, religion can be taught in school as long as it's taught in world history, and not just one religion, but all of them. Talk about, Judaism and Muslim and Buddha, and Shinto, and, go down to the Aztecs and, some of the things that they believed in. You don't have to go into the why. That's for the individual religions to go into, but go into that, this is when they, came about. This is what, a basic breakdown of what they believe in, and then move on to the rest of the world history. But don't just, don't have a revival. Do not have don't trap kids into things that they don't believe in. And I've had a couple of assemblies where it's like, no, I don't believe in this. And I would try to stand back. No one would follow me, which, whatever, it is what it is. If you don't feel comfortable with something, you do what these kids did. You zoom right out of that classroom.
Kudos to them.
Kudos
One of the
to
things too that got me about this was the people who organized it, who were so one-sidedly blind to the fact that what they were doing was so good for the community too. I know the
Mhm.
minister said something about when he looks in a neighborhood like the one the school was in, and he sees all the kids with anxiety and depression and addiction, and what they need is more of the Lord. And when I see,
No.
then when I see that stuff, I think, well, what these kids need are more counselors, therapists, social programs. And when it comes right down to it, isn't anxiety, depression, and addiction, isn't that all part of high school anyway?
Hello. Hell fucking hello. Yes, it is. Yeah, you don't need the Lord. You need wraparound services. Remember,
Yeah.
there is still a whole push to actually have school counselors, psychologists, social workers, ding to my industry, to be in schools to help kids go through the pains of adolescentness.
I had an amazing social worker when I was in high school, and she did get me through some of my own making issues. But yeah, we need more of that. We need, because sometimes students can't talk to their parents in the same way that they can talk to somebody else, because they're too close to the situation. They can't talk to their friends as they can talk to somebody else. They can't talk to religious leaders, or they need something to kind of like, or they need someone to be a sounding board that isn't judgmental, that can compartmentalize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. They and and with that even being said, talking to friends, because you can't really talk to your parents about everything. I know majority of time talking to my friends, we got everything wrong.
Oh yeah.
That's why we need more education and not these damn revivals.
Hello.
Yes.
Right.
Hello. I even wanted to give a wink and a nod, but I'll use that as my wrap up towards the preacher, Mr. Pastor Nick Walker of Nick Walker Ministries. But we're going to go ahead and do our final thoughts on this. I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Secular, since you brought us in. You can go ahead and start the wrap up to take us out.
Yeah, I think this one's really easy. I really do. This is one of those situations where you look down at it for a second and you go, yeah, you know what? School time is for school, and church time is for church, and that's it. It's easy.
Full fucking stop. Indeed. Jason, you're next.
I'm just amazed that these kids were able to stand up for their rights, stand up for what they believe is right, and stand up for their friends who are not the same religion as them. Kudos to each and every last one of them, and shame on you, West Virginia. Please do better.
Indeed, indeed. And Kelly.
One of the things that really got me about it was one of the parents said that this is what the kids want. This is a step in the right direction. A little bit ironic for this segment of the show, but I started thinking to myself, if they're walking out, is this really what they want? I mean, are you really speaking for the kids, right? Because it didn't seem to me that she was, if they're walking out of the classroom.
Right.
So again, it's just like this one-sided idea that we are right about this, and there's nothing else, that there's no other opinions that can be had on this. So, yeah.
Yes, I agree with every last one of you. And I will just say this, that for my final thoughts on this, I want to particularly address the preacher that led the revival, who is 25 years old. Not to crap on his age, because obviously we've met a bunch of smart, intelligent, wonderful 25-year-olds that even work with us at the ACA. But one of the things that I would love for Pastor Walker to do is to go back to the Bible, and I want him to read Proverbs 19:2, which says, "Even zeal is no good without knowledge, and he who hurries his footsteps misses the mark."
And that's biblical.
Biblically speaking, of course, yeah.
Biblically
Biblically
speaking.
speaking.
Biblically speaking.